Yara opened the envelope and froze. The words on the page didn't just disappoint, they terrified her. Allegedly, her green card application had been denied. No gentle warning, no explanation that made her feel safe. Just a cold, legal notice telling her she might have to leave the US in 30 days. Joy, sitting across the room, read it too, and you could almost feel his panic radiate through the air. He rubbed his face, muttering under his breath, and for a moment, it was like the walls themselves were closing in. This wasn't some minor paperwork issue. This was the kind of legal hit that could unravel everything. Their marriage, their daughter's life, everything they had worked for. What would you do if everything you built in the US could vanish in 30 days? Imagine walking into your home tomorrow and realizing it could be the last time you see it as your own. That's the reality Yara and Joy were facing in that instant. The notice allegedly said her presence could be considered out of status unless action was taken immediately. No mercy, no pause, just a clock ticking louder with each passing hour. Yara's hands trembled. She pressed them to her face, her mind racing. Joy tried to take control, pacing the room, calling a lawyer while Yara sat silently, processing the weight of every single word. Fear wasn't just knocking at the door, it had kicked it in and taken over the living room. You could almost hear her thoughts. What happens to Mila if I have to leave? What if they force me out? The stakes were higher than they had ever been. Motherhood collided with legal chaos, and no one could offer a simple fix. Joy's usual bravado crumbled. The man who had once joked and laughed through reality TV cameras now seemed smaller, swallowed by worry. Every failed call, every unanswered email made him bite his lip harder. Allegedly, he even considered the unthinkable, moving the whole family out of the country if it meant staying together. That's how high the pressure had climbed in mere moments. And Yara, she wasn't yelling, she wasn't screaming, but her quiet panic hit harder than any outburst. Sleepless nights were looming, and the mental weight of possibly uprooting her daughter's life was unbearable. Friends later said she barely ate, barely spoke, just stared at that letter like it contained the final verdict on everything she loved. But what happened next shocked everyone, and no one saw it coming. Rumors started swirling immediately. Calls from lawyers, frantic texts to family, whispers from friends, everyone was trying to piece together what could be done. Yet no one could stop the emotional storm that was breaking over them. And as this first wave of panic hit, it became clear that this was just the beginning. The notice wasn't just a letter, it was a trigger. It set off a chain of events that would test every ounce of patience, love, and resilience Yara and Joy had. Everything they had built, everything they had dreamed of, suddenly hung by a thread. And the question remained, could they survive 30 days of uncertainty without losing more than just their peace of mind? Before all this chaos, Yara and Joy's story seemed like the kind of roller coaster we love watching on 90 Day Fiancé. They met through a travel dating app, a swipe right story that turned serious fast. Yara left her home in Ukraine to join Joy in the US, and what started as excitement quickly became a whirlwind of adjustments, misunderstandings, and intense emotional highs and lows. They came to the US on a cone visa, which basically means she had 90 days to get married or risk being sent back. After saying their vows, the next step was adjusting her status so she could legally stay. For anyone who has dealt with paperwork, think of it as juggling fire while standing on a tightrope. Miss a single form, miss a single deadline, and the consequences aren't just annoying, they're life-changing. Even before the green card scare, their relationship had been through a lot. Yara and Joy faced long-distance struggles when work pulled him away for months at a time. Yara often felt isolated, like she was living someone else's life. And it wasn't just the distance. Cultural differences, personality clashes, and Joy's partying habits added friction. At one point, Yara threatened to leave and take their daughter if things didn't change. Talk about raising the stakes. Then there was the heartbreak they couldn't prepare for. Yara experienced pregnancy loss, a deeply emotional moment that left both of them raw and shaken. Joy wasn't always emotionally present during that time, which created cracks in trust. Yet somehow, they managed to navigate therapy together, trying to rebuild communication and understanding. By the time they moved to Miami with their daughter Mila, they seemed stronger, though not unscarred. It's worth noting how much relocation stress played a role in everything. Leaving Louisiana meant Joy gave up his family support system. Yara had to leave the comfort of any friends she'd made. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a fresh start also became a test of endurance for both of them. You could see them juggling the excitement of new opportunities with the pressure of new responsibilities. And let's be honest, we've all been in situations where moving feels like starting life over, only with higher stakes and less sleep. Through all of this, the audience got a front row seat to their ups and downs. You laughed with them, rolled your eyes at Joy's questionable decisions, and felt the heartbreak when Yara's fears and Joy's frustrations collided. The story wasn't just about love, it was about survival in a relationship that demanded constant compromise, patience, and emotional stamina. If you thought things were tough before, wait until you see how this notice changes everything. Because here's the thing, all those challenges, the therapy sessions, the lost sleep, the missed calls, the cultural clashes were just the opening act. The green card notice didn't just add pressure, it transformed every previous struggle into an immediate high stakes crisis. Suddenly, every past decision, every unspoken argument, every tiny misstep mattered more than ever. And with 30 days on the clock, the question was no longer how to survive long distance or therapy, it was whether their life in America, their family, and their future could survive at all. The moment Yara read the notice, it wasn't just panic, it was the start of a mental storm that didn't let up. Sleepless nights became the norm. She barely ate, barely spoke, and every sound in the house made her jump. Joy pacing, phones ringing, the quiet hum of life around her, all of it felt like potential danger. Her mind kept returning to one question: what would happen to Mila if she had to leave? Every parent in her shoes would understand the terror of that thought, and Yara was living it in real time. Joy, on the other hand, went into overdrive. Panic first, then guilt, then a kind of controlled anger aimed at anything he could blame. He called lawyers, canceled plans, turned their home into what friends later described as a command center of chaos. He raged against deadlines, missed filings, and the apparent rigidity of the legal system. At one point, sources say he even considered uprooting the family entirely to avoid separation. You could see the desperation in every move, every phone call, every pacing step across the room. Then the family drama hit. Joy's relatives started asking questions. Why did Yara spend extended time abroad if her status wasn't secure? Why wasn't more being done? Arguments erupted, accusations flew, and long simmering resentments bubbled to the surface. Yara, already on edge, felt attacked, humiliated, and invisible. According to insiders, she left one family meeting in tears, accusing everyone of seeing her as temporary from the start. Suddenly, the emotional weight wasn't just legal, it was social. She was trapped on all sides. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, a lawyer allegedly gave a blunt assessment. Prior travel history, missed paperwork, and rigid deadlines meant Yara's case was weak. Emergency motions or appeals might help, but no guarantees. The message was clear, the system was unforgiving, and time wasn't on their side. This was the moment everything Yara thought she knew about life in America started falling apart. Rumors began circulating next. Routine enforcement checks, whispers of possible visits from immigration authorities, minor procedural delays, all of it fed Yara's growing fear. She jumped at every knock on the door, barely slept, and refused to leave the house without careful planning. Friends said her anxiety was palpable, and Joy's panic only amplified it. Every day felt like a countdown to an unknown disaster. Even production reportedly took notice. Filming was paused, not officially by TLC, but because Yara was no longer emotionally capable of participating. She wasn't performing for the cameras, she was surviving, keeping herself and her daughter safe in the only way she could. Moments of despair, heated conversations, and frantic calls to lawyers were happening off-screen, hidden from fans. Yet the emotional impact was massive, both for the couple and anyone close enough to witness it. And while the days crawled by, the tension never eased. Joy alternated between trying to stay optimistic and admitting his own failures. He blamed himself for underestimating immigration law, for trusting the process, and for believing marriage alone could protect them. The couple's dynamic shifted under extreme pressure, Yara silently bearing the psychological burden, Joy outwardly wrestling with guilt and frustration, and family dynamics spiraling out of control. The stage was set for a crisis that went beyond legal paperwork. Fear, anger, guilt, and humiliation all collided in the same space. Every conversation, every decision, every moment of silence carried weight. And while nothing had yet been finalized, the emotional fallout was already devastating. Lawyers started coming into the picture, one after another, each with a slightly different take on what could save Yara. Some offered cautious hope, suggesting emergency motions or requests for humanitarian relief because of her marriage and Mila's U.S. citizenship. Others delivered grim assessments, warning that past paperwork gaps and travel history made the case fragile. Joy clung to every word, hoping for a loophole, a lifeline, Anything to buy more time. Yara listened quietly, shrinking into herself as the reality of each assessment sank in. The coldness of bureaucracy was relentless. The paperwork didn't care about sleepless nights, maternal fears, or the weight of a marriage under stress. Every sealed envelope that arrived, every phone call from a legal office, was a reminder that the system didn't bend for emotion. Joy tried to control it all, coordinating calls, pacing the house, keeping notes, pushing for clarity. Yara responded by withdrawing, conserving energy, and silently bracing for the worst. Their behaviors reflected stress rather than identity. He needed to act, she needed to survive. With every consultation, the stakes escalated. A lawyer hinted that even a small misstep could accelerate enforcement. Another suggested timing was critical, implying that missing a single window could make emergency motions ineffective. Joy's frustration grew. He snapped at the phone, vented his anger to friends, and admitted to himself that he had underestimated how harsh immigration law could be. Meanwhile, Yara became quieter, her anxiety building with each new update. Rumors from production and informal contacts didn't help. Whispers of possible enforcement circulated through the household and social circles. While nothing official had been filed yet, the constant possibility of unannounced visits kept them on edge. Each day felt like standing on a cliff. One wrong move and the fall could be irreversible. The emotional toll started to show in their interactions. Joy pushed harder, trying to control the narrative, coordinate strategies, and pressure lawyers for answers. Yara resisted, withdrawing into silence, avoiding conversations, and focusing on protecting Mila. Their marriage became a battlefield of intention versus reaction, his need to act against her need to endure. You could feel the tension in every glance, every pause, every word left unsaid. Mini crisis moments kept cropping up. A missed email deadline triggered panic. A delayed phone call from an attorney set off arguments. Sealed envelopes arrived with no explanation, each one a potential bombshell. And through all of this, they had to maintain a fragile normalcy for Mila, hiding panic behind routines, smiles, and small moments of pretend calm. Just when you think there's a chance to catch a break, another twist pushes them closer to the edge. By now, the household was on high alert. Joy's control attempts became more intense, bordering on obsession. Yara's withdrawal deepened, a quiet yet palpable resistance to the chaos around her. Every interaction between them carried the weight of possible disaster. Even small decisions, who answered the phone, who handled a document, were loaded with tension, fear, and unspoken blame. Through all of this, you could see a clear pattern. Under extreme legal pressure, behaviors take over. Joy's need to act clashed with Yara's instinct to protect and wait. The law didn't care about love, motherhood, or past sacrifices. It only cared about deadlines, forms, and procedures. And the couple, caught in this cold machine, had to navigate a maze of emotion, strategy, and survival. The situation was unpredictable. One wrong move could shift everything, and even the smallest delay could bring them to the brink. The emotional and psychological strain compounded daily, turning ordinary interactions into high-stakes gambles. And yet, the narrative wasn't over. Every phone call, every sealed envelope, every legal update kept the suspense alive, keeping everyone guessing what the next twist might bring. The weight of the notice didn't just hang over Yara's head, it anchored itself to her heart. Every decision she faced carried consequences not just for herself, but for Mila. The question was unbearable. If she had to leave the US, would she go alone to protect her daughter, or risk taking Mila and creating a whole new set of legal complications? Every parent watching would understand the terror of this choice, and Yara was living it in real time. Her instinct to protect her child collided violently with the cold, rigid reality of immigration law. Joy watched silently as Yara wrestled with the impossible. He knew the notices, deadlines, and rules were partially his responsibility. Every missed form, every underestimated requirement, every moment he assumed love would shield them haunted him now. Friends say he became physically ill, barely eating, barely sleeping, pacing the house as though running could outrun the consequences. He blamed himself for the panic, the fear, and the unbearable choices Yara now faced. Meanwhile, Yara began quietly packing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but methodically. Clothes, keepsakes, photographs, tiny reminders of life they had built. Friends close to the family said the slow, deliberate act of gathering items was her way of mentally preparing, of taking some control over chaos that felt completely unmanageable. Each folded shirt and carefully stored baby blanket carried the weight of goodbye, or at least the possibility of one. Lawyers remained a constant presence. Final consultations brought more assessments, more potential outcomes, and more pressure. Some attorneys offered faint hope, emergency motions, humanitarian relief, or procedural loopholes that might delay enforcement. Others delivered sobering clarity. If no immediate relief came, departure was inevitable. Each conversation pushed Yara closer to despair and Joy closer to guilt-driven frenzy. Every word was a mini earthquake, shaking the foundations of their marriage and their sense of security. Rumors swirled, adding fuel to the fire. Whispers of possible visits, procedural checks, and undocumented enforcement created a constant undercurrent of tension. Every knock at the door, every unrecognized number on the phone became a trigger for fear. Their home, once a place of laughter and routines, became a pressure cooker of anxiety, strategy, and emotional exhaustion. And through it all, the emotional core remained Yara's maternal instinct. Even as Joy panicked, even as lawyers delivered conflicting advice, even as rumors amplified fear, she prioritized Mila. Friends say her focus was never on herself. She whispered her daughter's name, imagined her safety, and calculated every move through the lens of protection. That kind of clarity under crisis is exhausting, isolating, and heartbreaking to witness. Joy, on the other hand, alternated between trying to reassure Yara and privately grappling with his own self-recrimination. Sources claim he admitted to himself that he had underestimated the legal system, overestimated his ability to control outcomes, and misread the risks of their past choices. His breakdown wasn't a dramatic argument, it was quiet, full of guilt, pacing, and attempts to make up for what he saw as failures. Their marriage was being tested not by infidelity or neglect, but by the merciless pressure of reality itself. And then came the small, quiet, devastating twists that reality doesn't film. Yara lingered over Mila's baby clothes, hospital bracelets, framed ultrasound pictures. Every touch was a whispered goodbye, a mental rehearsal for loss, a way to process grief before action. Friends say the couple spoke little, not out of anger, but because words had lost their power. Decisions weighed too heavily, and silence carried more meaning than conversation. And just when they thought they had a plan, a single phone call changes everything. An attorney's voice, calm but firm, reminded them that deadlines were unforgiving. Options were shrinking. Every calculation, every mental scenario, every carefully packed suitcase could be upended with one piece of news. Panic, dread, and strategy collided, leaving both Yara and Joy at the edge of decisions they never wanted to face. The tension was unbearable. Would Yara leave alone to keep Mila safe? Would Joy's guilt-driven decisions help or hurt them? Could they survive the next week, the next day, without everything they had built being ripped away? The emotional stakes were at their absolute peak, with love, motherhood, and the cold precision of bureaucracy locked in an impossible struggle. Nothing in their past challenges, from therapy to relocation, from loss to long distance, prepared them for this. Every moment was layered with fear, heartbreak, and the weight of choices that no parent or spouse should ever have to make. And as the hours ticked by, the story held everyone watching hostage, heart and mind entwined with every phone call, every envelope, and every silent decision that could change their lives forever. Even as Yara wrestled with legal deadlines and maternal fears, Joy turned to social media. His Instagram stories were a mix of casual updates, Q&A sessions, and cryptic posts that seemed harmless at first. But fans watching closely knew better. Every post was loaded with subtext. Joy teased moments of drama, hinted at tough decisions, and dropped casual comments that left followers scrambling for context. It was almost like a reality puzzle, with each story a tiny piece of a larger, unseen struggle. Fans immediately jumped in, dissecting every word. Some praised Joy for honesty, others accused him of exaggeration, and a few tried to predict the next move. Comment sections became battlegrounds of speculation. Is Yara leaving? One fan asked. Did Joy mess up again? Questioned another. Even posts about everyday things, lunch, workouts, or mundane errands were read as coded updates. Social media became its own version of the show, where perception often outweighed reality. The contrast between public persona and private chaos was stark. On camera, Joy might look confident, teasing, in control. Online, he maintained a playful tone, trying to lighten the mood with humor and emojis. Behind the scenes, sources said he was panicked, pacing, and obsessively tracking deadlines. Yara, meanwhile, remained mostly silent online, preserving privacy and protecting Mila. Her absence only fueled fan speculation, amplifying tension. Human behavior in the spotlight is fascinating. Joy's need to communicate while maintaining image created a tension between transparency and strategy. Fans interpreted every pause, emoji, and story as an intentional clue. They were reading between lines, constructing narratives, and often assigning motives where none existed. It's a mix of curiosity, empathy, and a little obsession. And that's exactly what keeps engagement high. Everyone wants to feel like they understand the drama before it unfolds on screen. Witty commentary isn't hard to find either. Fans joked about Joy's cryptic wisdom, his subtle flexes of control, and the way he seemingly managed panic with memes. One post showing a quiet coffee moment became fodder for debates about whether he was hiding stress or simply enjoying a rare calm. Every reaction, every interpretation, became another mini cliffhanger, keeping the audience guessing and emotionally invested. Meanwhile, rumors continued to swirl. Followers speculated on Yara's next move, potential relocations, or even TLC's editing choices. Each rumor fed into the narrative tension without needing actual confirmation. It was social media feeding social media, a loop of speculation, drama, and emotional engagement that mirrored the real-life stakes for Yara and Joy. But are fans seeing the real story, or just the surface drama? The truth, according to insiders, is far more complex than any post or comment could capture. Behind every laugh, every teasing comment, there were sleepless nights, careful calculations, and emotional strain that no camera could fully show. Social media offered a glimpse, but the real story, the fear, the maternal decisions, the guilt, and the private heartbreak, remained mostly hidden from view. Even with the world watching, both the couple and their audience were navigating different realities. Fans thought they were seeing chaos unfold in real time, but for Yara and Joy, it was a controlled, careful management of perception, timing, and information. Every post, every story, every pause was a behavioral decision in a high-stakes environment, balancing engagement, emotional truth, and privacy. The tension between what fans see and what actually happens adds another layer to the story. Social media engagement amplifies suspense, but it can also mislead, creating narratives that might never match reality. And for viewers, that's the part that keeps them glued, trying to decode behavior, predict outcomes, and anticipate which choice will finally tip the balance between hope and heartbreak. By the time the next episode aired, fans were more invested than ever. They were analyzing Joy's posts, guessing Yara's reactions, and wondering who would win this silent battle between public performance and private survival. And the truth, most of the real drama was still behind closed doors, waiting for the final moments to shake everyone who thought they knew the story. The moment everyone feared quietly arrived. Yara sat in the dim light of her living room, Mila asleep in her arms, staring at the floor as if searching for answers in the carpet. No words, no dramatic outburst, just the weight of every decision she had to make pressing down on her chest. Every breath seemed measured, careful, as though the wrong one could trigger the unraveling of everything she had built in the US. Joy was nearby, silently watching, guilt etched across his face. Every missed deadline, every assumption that paperwork would sort itself out now felt like a betrayal. He had tried to control the process, to be the fixer, the protector, but the stark reality was unavoidable. The system did not care about marriage vows, personal sacrifices, or love. It only cared about forms, timelines, and cold rules. Yara's grief was private but total. She whispered Mila's name repeatedly, as if repeating it could anchor them both against the looming threat. Thoughts of leaving alone tore at her. Could she protect her daughter while still fighting to stay? Or would leaving together create complications that could change everything? Every choice was a risk, every move a potential heartbreak. Joy finally spoke, his voice low and rough from days of sleepless nights. He admitted mistakes he had avoided facing, recognized moments he thought were trivial, but now carried enormous consequences. Friends and sources described him as physically and emotionally drained, a man trying to make sense of chaos he helped create. He wrestled with helplessness, guilt, and the cruel irony that love alone could not solve this problem. The couple huddled together in hushed conversations, talking through survival strategies, relocation options, and possible compromises. Every sentence carried the weight of uncertainty. Would they leave the US voluntarily to avoid enforcement? Could emergency motions or humanitarian petitions provide a lifeline? Or was the clock already running out faster than they realized? Sources said these private talks were intense, emotional, and utterly silent to outsiders. No cameras, no producers, no audience to witness the strain. Rumors of enforcement hovered like a dark cloud. Each phone call, each message, each envelope seemed heavier than the last. Friends reported that Yara barely ate or slept, consumed with fear for Mila's future. Joy oscillated between anger, panic, and determination to find a solution, sometimes pacing, sometimes sitting in stunned silence. The ordinary moments, the coffee mug, the half-packed bag, a toy left on the floor, suddenly felt like symbols of a life that could vanish overnight. And just when it seemed they had exhausted every option, a final consultation with an attorney delivered sobering news. Emergency motions were either denied or stalled, and humanitarian relief had not come through. The couple faced the cold, uncompromising reality of immigration law. Every plan they had quietly devised teetered on the edge of collapse. Yara did not scream or argue. She did not throw papers or demand answers. Instead, she simply held Mila closer, rocking her gently while tears fell silently down her face. Friends said she whispered to herself, repeating over and over, "I did everything right." Her grief was raw, maternal, and hauntingly quiet. It was the kind of despair that no camera could truly capture, the private aftermath of a public journey. Joy's emotional breaking point was different but no less profound. He admitted, even to himself, that some things could not be fixed by hard work or intention. He had to accept limits imposed by the system, confront his own misjudgments, and face the consequences of choices he thought were minor. The guilt was relentless, the frustration deep, and yet he stayed, holding Yara and Mila, trying to offer what comfort he could. The suspense of their future remained unbearable. Would Yara stay and risk everything? Would she leave, taking Mila but surrendering the life they had fought for? Or would a last-minute legal reprieve intervene, offering hope just as it seemed gone? Every observer, every fan, every insider was left with more questions than answers. The uncertainty hung in the air, heavy and unresolved, keeping everyone on edge. This was a private moment that no camera could capture, and it changes everything you thought you knew. By the end, the house was quiet, the only sounds the soft breathing of a child and the occasional shuffle of papers. Outside, the world speculated, rumors spread, social media debated. Inside, Yara and Joy faced the unvarnished reality. Love and devotion could not bend bureaucracy, and every choice carried consequences they could not fully control. For a couple who had survived therapy, loss, relocation, and cultural challenges, this was a trial unlike any before, a moment that tested not just their relationship, but their ability to endure in the face of relentless, impersonal systems. The story did not resolve neatly. No cameras, no dramatic courtroom showdown, no final declaration. Just a mother holding her daughter, a father grappling with regret, and a ticking clock reminding them that life could change irrevocably in a matter of days. The audience is left wondering, still on the edge, what would you do if everything you built could disappear tomorrow?